welcome to Easy Piecy Quilts. I'm Julia Tiedemann, and today we're going to be talking about the God and Country quilt. I really love this quilt. I love our flag. I love our country. And this quilt is a representation of all those things. This quilt is meant to honor the people that have served our country, and I'm really excited to make it with you today. So this quilt behind me was made from our kit, our Easy Peasy kit that you can find on the website. It is Riley Blake fabric, and it is just basically a collection of different fabrics that I put together to that I thought looked nice together. So that is our kit. The original pattern I designed with this fabric that is called American Dream. It's also by Riley Blake. Unfortunately, it's several years ago and it's getting farther and few between to find that fabric. But here is the original quilt, which I'll flip it over so you can see the other cross, which I really love this fabric as well. So a couple of questions that I get a lot on this quilt are, number one, why is one of the flags backwards? Or there's two forms of the flag, and people see that the one that's up and down as backwards. When you display the flag, the Union, also the stars or the blue part of the flag, is always supposed to be displayed in the left upper corner. That was why I made the decision to orient the flag in that manner on this quilt. It is your quilt. If you want to make all the flags the same and orient them in different directions, that's the beauty of quilting and art. You can do whatever feels good, looks good, and is a representation that you want to display. So that is one big question. The other big question I get asked on this quilt is, how many jelly rolls do I need? Well, every jelly roll is different. So I cannot answer that question. And I wish I'm not trying to, not answer it or be evasive with that, but I can't answer that question because every jelly roll has a different combination of red, white, and blue. And so one jelly roll may be enough for the throw with one jelly roll design, and then another design may not have nearly enough white or nearly enough red to do the same exact project. So on the back of the pattern is the number of jelly rolls per color that you need to complete each size of the quilt. So if you go and you find a collection of 2.5-inch strips that you like, you need to find out how many reds, how many blues, and then just do the simple math to how many of those that you would need. And I'm sorry I can't make it easier, but that's just how it is. Everyone's collection is a little different, and that's why we like different collections. So the easy thing about this quilt too is it is all 2.5-inch strips, or also a lot of people call that jelly rolls. So when you get a kit, or if you're using yardage for this quilt, you can just go ahead. The first thing you can do is just cut all 2.5-inch strips out of all your fabric, and you will be set to start subcutting those strips, because we know that we can get this entire quilt, including the border, out of 2.5-inch strips. So that makes the initial cutting a little bit easier too. So this quilt means a lot to my heart, and I am so glad that I get to share it with you, God and Country. In order to make these flags more quickly and efficiently, we can use strip piecing for the stripes. So these are just half strips of fabric. I would obviously be using full strips, all the width of fabric length, to make these strip sets. But since we're kind of on a limited space here, I decided to make them half strips. So you're going to take your red strips and you're going to make a strip set with a red, white, and red. And then you're going to make a separate strip set with white, red, white. And this, the pattern will tell you how many of each to make for the size of quilt that you are constructing. So I'll go ahead and sew these together, and we'll subcut those together here in just a minute. Your crosses, they each have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. So if you just think about it that way and say, okay, I have to cut, 12 crosses or whatever your number of crosses is for the size that you're cutting, and cut these components for each one of the crosses, that makes it easy to think about how many to cut. And this this cross, so when I was designing this pattern, I thought to myself, I could make this piece all one piece. In other words, this crossbar is all going to be sewn together anyway, so what difference does it make if it's in 3 pieces? Well, then when you're sewing the strips together, the sashing with the blocks, this gets offset, and it didn't look good. My crosses were not lined up well, and they looked wonky. So when I split these pieces to where I could line up the corners with the sashing and the blocks, it just came together very nicely. And so I'm not trying to be mean by making you cut extra pieces. I think it actually works out better in the end to have the cross constructed like this. So that's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and cut out all of our crosses. And then the other thing, when I was introducing this pattern, I said you can make everything out of 2.5-inch strips, which is true. You can make the union portion or the star portion of the flag in with jelly rolls. And actually I did that on my first quilt. But if you get the kit, or if you're using yardage for your pattern for your quilt, I would suggest going ahead and cutting out the navy portion or the star portion in one piece, and the measurements for that are in the pattern, and the measurements and how to put together the jelly roll strip piecing for this portion. So you can do it either way. You'll just save a little time with doing it this way. So I will go ahead and sew this together. We'll go ahead and do the strip one just to show you how to do that. I will construct my strip piecing of the stripe portion, and then we'll do that, and we'll keep moving along. Here are the strip sets. And just remember, anytime you're working with strip sets, they're only going to be as accurate as your cutting and your seam allowances. So I have had people say my blocks are 2 different sizes, or this doesn't work out to be correct. Well, the first thing I would check is your seam allowance if that's the case, because the math works on this quilt, and I've made this quilt many times. So just check that and make sure that that is accurate. So when you make strip sets, you're going to have some wonky ends. It's just, nothing comes out exact on that. So what I usually do is I just line up my ruler with several areas on the strip set so that I know I'm cutting at a 90-degree angle, and I trim the end off of that, which makes that a nice side to go off of. Now your strip sets are going to be different sizes. The red, white, red strip set is a different size than the white, red, white. And just a note about the other strip set that we did for the navy portion of the flag, we put that together as well. So let me go ahead and cut these strip sets, and then I'll show you how this block goes together. Here is the layout of the flag. These strip sets, the red, white, red, they are very close when you cut them to needing the entire width of fabric strip. So just be careful when you're cutting the end off, and when you're sewing them, that you at least try and line one side up so that you can get the most strip set out of that piece, because it does come out pretty close on this one. You should be able to get it fine, but just be careful that you try and preserve as much of the strip set as you can so you can get all of these that you need. So here we are with this portion. This is the flag that goes horizontally. So if you sew all your flags together like this, that's fine, but you are not going to get the navy portion of the flag in the left-hand upper corner if you sew them all together like that. So you will notice that they are not they are not interchangeable. So what you have to do is you have to sew the vertical flag together like this. So here's your vertical flag with your navy in the left upper corner, and let's turn that again horizontal. So if we turn it this way or we turn it this way, we are not getting the flag put together correctly. You have to move your pieces around a little bit. They're not interchangeable. So just be careful of that part. Make sure you're laying out your vertical flags and your horizontal flags in different piles and putting them together appropriately. The last part of this block is to add background pieces to either end of the flag. So let's put this flag together. We'll add the background end pieces and then we'll talk about the sashing. At this point, I've got our 4 blocks in the 4 corners around a cross. So I think the easiest way to put this quilt together is once you get all of your flag blocks done, lay the quilt out, because this is one cross, but in the sashing, there will be this cross, you'll have sashing here, and then you may have another part of a cross on this end of this piece of sashing. So you're going to have to coordinate all of those pieces on that cross around the blocks next door. It's kind of hard to I guess explain, but it's just easier if you lay out your quilt at this point, and that'll make it a lot easier to get all your sashing pieces in the right place. If you use the same fabric for all your crosses and you don't do different fabrics, then that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to think as hard about where each and every part of the cross is laid out and how it's attached in the sashing. It'll make it a lot easier. So the first thing that I would recommend is thinking about this quilt in horizontal rows. So the first row of this quilt is going to be your flag blocks and then your sashing blocks in between your flag blocks, and those will include a piece of background fabric and then a piece of your upper portion of your cross. So we'll sew these 2 pieces together right here, and then I'll sew this together in a horizontal row. Your next row of your quilt is also in a horizontal row, but it's just the sashing with the cross pieces that go across. So you're going to sew background, cross piece, cross piece, cross piece, background. And the same thing with your next row. You're going to have your flag block, then you're going to have the lower portion of your cross piece, your sashing, and then on this end of this piece of sashing, you'll have another upper part of another cross. So that'll also meet up, but and then another flag. But we're going to think about this as a horizontal row here. So once we get this attached, we'll sew these pieces together. Now, if you sew this row together, and then this row together, and you press toward the sashing, or if you want to press toward the flag, that's okay too, but when the sashing meets up with these seams, it's just easier to kind of press everything toward the sashing pieces. If you press everything towards the sashing pieces, and then this seam right here, if you're pressing these seams this way, if you press these seams this way, and then you press this seam this way toward the sashing, then you'll be able to nest this corner right here, and your crosses will line up perfectly. And you won't have this portion of the cross off to one side as you sew along these horizontal rows together. So let me go ahead and get the sashing pieces put together, and then we'll sew the horizontal rows together, and I'll kind of show you what I mean with the nesting of seams, and we'll get this put together. Here is our horizontal row with the sashing piece connecting our two flag blocks. Here is a horizontal sashing row with the cross portion of the cross sewn together with the background strip, and that is going to be a row. And then our next row of flags and sashing with the bottom part. And these, like I said before, these seams are in and these seams are out, so that when we put these rows together, you're going to see that those seams are going to nest, and that's going to make it really easy to line up your crosses and make sure that they're even on both sides and they look nice. And the same with this, the seams are going in this way. So then all we'll do is put our horizontal rows together. And this seems complicated because we can't get a big picture of the quilt in front of you in this setting, but every single bit of this is in a picture form in the pattern, and the entire quilt is laid out both queen size, throw size, king size. It's all in the pattern. So here is the finished quilt with the same cross put together with your flags all on four sides. Now you'll notice on the edge of the quilt there's no other cross to meet with that other end of the cross, but over here you're going to notice that once you start getting your crosses, that this piece you have to kind of plan, because you're going to have this part of the cross on this side and this part of the cross on this side. So it's just laying out the quilt, really, is all it is, just to plan for these kinds of things. And you'll also have another meeting of sashing where there's two different crosses on this portion. So this sashing meets up with the bottom of this cross and the top of this cross. So if you lay everything out before you put it together, it really becomes easy, and follow the pattern, and that will make it much more clear. So that is God and Country. Thank you so much for joining me on our YouTube channel. If you make God and Country, I would love to see it. Shoot me an email at easypiecyquilts@gmail.com, or you can tag me on Instagram or Facebook, and I would love to see your projects. If you are new to kits, let me introduce you to our kit for this project. Like I said, the fabrics are exactly the same as what you see behind me. You will get this group of fabrics to make this exact kit. So it comes like this, that you will have enough fabric to make this quilt, and probably a little bit more. If you want to make my flags, summer flags, this would be a great pattern to use the scraps of this quilt for. But anyway, you'll get all of the fabric. Go ahead and cut it in 2.5-inch strips, and you also get the pattern on the back. In each kit, the pattern is included. So that makes it really easy. But this kit, or excuse me, this pattern and this quilt looks beautiful with scraps. So if you have a lot of red, white, and blue scraps, you can also make a very beautiful God and Country quilt. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.